We want to, we're not doing it just on automatic, and so when you've been ordained for a while, you have to really make this something you keep coming back to, every day. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not just that you ordain and then you space out and you just keep doing what you're doing and whatever, the monastics around you are doing, but without really thinking about why you're doing it. So this motivation is quite important to keep very vivid in our mind. Not only for monastic life, but for Dharma practice in general. Yeah. It's on. Yeah? Okay. So today, Venerable Tarpa and Venerable Yeshe are in Spokane shopping. Now, you might say, well, these monastics are going shopping. But they are, the work that they're doing is in service of the Sangha. So when we live together as a community, then we divide up the different jobs and the different things, and people do them all in service for the Sangha. And so although we try and arrange it so that nobody has to miss teachings and so on, sometimes there's things that come up, like when you're building a building and you need a stove and the only hours they're open are in the daytime, that are the time when the teachings are, that then, clearly you have to miss one of the regular activities the Sangha's doing. So I think it's important, because lots of times we have this airy-fairy idea of monastic life, like you ordain and then after that all you do is meditate, and preferably all alone in a cave, and then realizations just shower upon you magically as you float up in the sky and are blissful. Oh. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it's really not like that, It's like, the precepts are designed for ordinary beings, and we're ordinary beings, and they help us become extraordinary beings. But we really need to get over this fantasy of what monastic life is. Like I'm just going to study and meditate. That's all I do. I don't have to do any work for anything. Well, actually, if you're living in a community, you have to do something, because everybody has to work together to sustain the community. And even if you live on your own, you have to do something. It's not like in your cave they have an instant water dispenser and kerosene flows through the rocks, and I'm sorry, you don't use kerosene. That there's a ready-made gas stove, propane that automatically gets filled, and anything that tears your robes that tear just automatically get fixed. And no, I mean, like the meditators above Dharamsala, they all carry their own water. Yeah, so you have to walk to the stream with a big barrel and, or pot or whatever it is, and bring your water back. And then, if you're fortunate, a disciple brings you kerosene. You don't have, a nice gas stove, and you have to sew your own stuff when your robes break. And if your hut needs repairs, you have to repair them. So, this is what I'm trying to say is that people have such a fanciful idea sometimes of monastic life, and then they're very disappointed afterwards when they realize, gee, I still have to do things to take care of this body, and I still have to do things to, to take care of the community, and they somehow feel like, well, now I'm a monastic and everybody should take care of me. No, You know, Lama Yeshe, one of the big things he really hammered into us, and I have this very vivid image of him because he really made it a point one day to pick up his mala, and he said, your mantra is, I am the servant of others, I am the servant of others, I am the servant of others. He said, that's got to be your motivation for whatever you do, you know, and don't expect other people to serve you. Yeah. Having said that, you know, we do receive a lot of offerings and services from lay people, yeah, and we depend on the lay support a great deal. But we should knowing what it's like ourselves to serve others, then we should really make sure that we appreciate the service we receive and not just take it for granted, you know, and not have some kind of idea of, well, you know, I sit in the front row because I'm a monastic, so they should do stuff for me. You know, that kind of arrogant thing, which sometimes you find amongst people, that just doesn't fly. Yeah, that's the easiest way to have lay people disrespect you, is if you're arrogant and you know, have a big mouth or a bad mouth. Yeah, easiest way to lose respect. You know, so we've always got to work on our motivation. And then when we serve, to really have an attitude of serving. Yeah, not an attitude of, oh, well, okay, I guess somebody's got to do this. Gee, I hope it can be somebody else next time. You know, but to really, you know, kind of appreciate that opportunity and do our service work with joy. Yeah, and use it as a way to, you know, I mean, we have to keep our precepts while we're doing service work, don't we? You know, because so many of the precepts regard like how we get along with other people and how we treat other people. So, you know, those precepts are for when you're dealing with other people. Yeah, they're not for when you're, you know, in your fanciful dream in a cave where you're up there complaining because they don't have all the modern things you want, and at the same time hoping that everybody, all your friends, know how renounced you are and what a great yogi you are. Okay? So, yeah, to serve with joy. And everybody contributes something different according to their different abilities. But also what they do at some monasteries, well, the monasteries are quite different in the Tibetan monasteries because they have such a huge population of people who ordain, and many of them ordain when they were young, you know, and their philosophy is ordain a lot of people, and then out of a big batch you'll get a few gems, and then the rest will serve the monastery. Yeah, and so you have a whole group of people who, after some years of education, are not, you know, that way of teaching doesn't speak to them, and so they prefer very much to offer service. Yeah, in the Chinese monasteries, they do it a little bit different. You get a basic, you know, education program, and then after that, everybody offers service. But even, during the basic education program, they consider part of it as learning to do the different jobs in the monastery. So everybody rotates taking care of the altar, everybody rotates, you know, being in the kitchen or doing this or that. There are some jobs that have specific skills, so those you have to have people who have those skills, but many others, then you rotate so that you get an idea really of how the entire monastery runs and an appreciation for the jobs that everybody does in them. Yeah. In the Tibetan monasteries, it really is quite different. There's much more distinction. The Rinpoches don't work. If you enter a monastery and you have benefactors, then they can make a large donation to the monastery, and then you don't do as much work. Now, even when they first were exiled in India, then almost everybody, not everybody, but most people worked in the fields. Now the monasteries are richer, so they pay the Indians to work in the fields, so the monks have more time for their practice. Yeah. So things are different in each kind of place. Yeah. Okay. So today I thought we'd talk about what changes when you become a monastic. Okay, so I'll just briefly read the list and then go through and talk about them. So one is a change in appearance, and then second is a change in your name. Third, change in livelihood or occupation. Fourth, change in dress. Fifth, change in diet. Sixth, a change in your lodging or your shelter. And seven, change in responsibility towards the Buddhist community and society. Okay, so the first one, well, I'll talk about change in appearance and change in dress together, because they kind of come together. So, yes, our appearance does change when we are ordained, doesn't it? Yeah. One thing is, shave your hair, shave your beard. And that's, the way that it's been since in ancient India. And I think one of the reasons is because we tend to, a lot of hair is in a way an adornment, and how we have our hair creates an appearance and makes us attractive. And since we aren't trying to be attractive to anybody else, then there's no need to have the hair. Yeah, and it makes it so much easier. You don't have to worry about how your hair looks or what color it is. The guys don't have to worry about if they have hair or don't have hair. It's just because it all gets shaved off anyway. And so not only is our hair specifically referring to our vanity about our physical appearance, which applies to men as well as women, but also shaving it off represents cutting off ignorance, anger, and attachment, the three poisonous minds that are consistently creating problems for us and keeping us bound in samsara. Okay. Another change in appearance is we don't wear jewelry or ornaments or perfumes. Yeah, so without hair you don't have all the hair ornaments. Okay. We don't wear any jewelry that could be adorning in any way. Now the question of watches comes up a lot, but in Tibet, when they first had watches, they didn't know what they were for, so they were quite a status symbol. And even here too, what kind of watch you have, it creates an image, doesn't it? And it kind of shows what kind of person you are. If you have one of those ones with all those, different dials and barometric pressure and this and that, or if you have a Rolex, and so you create an image, you draw attention to yourself through your watch. So that's why we keep our watches in our pockets, or the Venerable Semke lineage, you tack it onto the back of your cap. Okay. And, again, all other jewelry, we have no need to decorate our body because we're not trying to attract anybody. And no need for perfumes or aftershave because we're not trying to attract anybody. You know, it's fine to use deodorant. Try and get, in fact, please use deodorant, and get a unscented version. Yeah, somebody gave me some unscented, and it still smells, but you know, you do your best. Same with soap. Try and use unscented soap. You know, whenever possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but try and do that. Okay. If you are getting glasses, I mean, get one glass frame and you just keep using those same frames unless they break or your old lenses don't fit in them or whatever, but we don't need to get the latest style in glass frames because that can also become an adornment, can't it? Yeah. Yeah, have you ever seen, I mean, you know, people are really into their glass frames. And, yeah, so all that kind of stuff we're just ignoring. No cosmetics, you know, you can use hand lotion or some kind of lotion if your skin is getting dry. You can use chapstick, but no lipstick. Don't, you know, draw in your eyebrows. I've seen monastics who draw in their eyebrows, you know. Don't do that. Yeah. There's other monastics who shave their eyebrows. In the Thai tradition, in Thailand, they shave their eyebrows, but that's not required in the Vinaya. The story I heard why the Thais do that is because some Thai monks were making eyes at women, you know, moving their eyebrows. I don't know quite how they do it, but so after that they had to shave their okay. Yeah, and we should really, you know, we wear our robes all the time unless, okay, the exceptions are, unless you're doing manual work where your robes would get totally filthy, in which case it's like disrespectful to the robes, or in which your robes would be a safety hazard. If you're working around equipment with an engine, you know, and your robes could get caught in that engine or something like that, then definitely you would put on work clothes. You see all of us in work clothes when we're in the forest, okay, or, you know, doing, working with the tools in the tool shop and stuff like that, okay. You get maroon work clothes. You don't put on jeans and a nice fashionable in-style sweatshirt or t-shirt. Okay, but you just wear maroon, you know, clothes, and keep it at that. And the only other exception, I think, is like if you're going through a border check, like if you're going to go on pilgrimage in China, then maybe you might want to put on, you know, just some maroon pants and, you know, not wear your robes out, because sometimes they, you know, the immigration officials in China can make a problem with that. You know, everywhere else in the world it's no problem, but in China, you know, sometimes it's better just to really be as incognito as you can, even though you're not doing anything anyway. Okay? The only other time where I wore lay clothes was because my parents were quite upset when I became a nun and didn't speak to me for quite a while, and then my brother got married and they wanted me to come to the wedding. And so my teacher told me to wear lay clothes. And he said, "You look like California girl." Ugh. I don't want to be California girl. But he was actually quite wise, because I think if I had landed in the LA International Airport with my head shaved and robes, my mother probably would have gone hysterical in the middle of the airport. So, you know, except for, you know, situations that are definitely something, you know, like that, yeah, then otherwise there's no need to have lay clothes or to wear lay clothes, you know. And I say this because I remember visiting one Dharma center. This was so strange. There was a Tibetan monk there. The guy who was the director and one of the teachers of the Dharma Center was a layman, married. And then there was a Tibetan monk there who was there teaching. And it was so funny because the layman wanted to wear robes, and even though he was a layman, and so he would wear these maroon skirts and try and, it kind of ups your status if you look like a monk, and he wore a white thing, which is appropriate for a lay practitioner. I think he might have been at sometimes wearing a red, a maroon one, which is not appropriate. But he really wanted to look like a Sangha member. And meanwhile, the Tibetan monk was putting on lay clothes because he was going to an ESL program and he wanted to become Americanized. And it was like, gee, this is really backwards. That's not the way it should be. Yeah, I mean, if you have the opportunity to become a monastic, you should treasure your robes and respect your robes and feel privileged to wear them and not just, kind of put on something else when you have to, go into town, unless there's some danger. If you're in a situation where there's some danger, then of course, okay. And within wearing robes, I notice that, because our robes are dictated, then sometimes people really look for nice quality cloth. Yeah, we get attached to nice quality cloth. Yeah, and so some people wear like silk shirts or, things with a pattern in them or whatever. And although, well, in the Chinese tradition, you don't wear silk, and you don't wear leather. So, again, not looking for the best quality cloth and really precious, soft, shiny cloth. And in India, shoes are a big status thing for monastics. Everybody wants Nike shoes. Yeah, and your jola, your monastic bag. So people now want fancy backpacks. Yeah, so we have to always keep aware. Are we getting something that we carry with us because it's nice and we use it as a status symbol? Like a really nice backpack or, special shoes or this or that. We should be completely content with whatever shoes we have. Best is not to wear leather. And also, we don't wear black and white because they're considered lay people's colors. Yeah? So it's okay to have brown shoes or dark blue shoes or something, but powder blue shoes or pink shoes or shoes with because they really decorate the shoes now with all sorts of different patches and things like this. My personal feeling is that's not appropriate for a monastic, because it's too easy for your mind to start thinking I'm different, I'm better. Okay, but of course you also have to have shoes that fit your feet properly, and if you have feet trouble and need arches or whatever, then you need to get the kind of shoes that work for you. And sometimes those may cost more, but if it's the difference between being able to walk and not being able to walk, I think that's okay. Yeah. Did I cover everything about dress? Underwear should be plain and simple, no fancy underwear. Yeah? Yeah. Yes, this whole thing about, we're by Vinaya the monks have 3 robes, the women have 5 robes, the nuns have 5 robes. So of those, you're allowed to have one set that is your own. Yeah, most people have a spare set so that they can wash what they're wearing, but your spare set you consider, and there's a little ceremony for doing it, either you place it under joint ownership where you share it with somebody else, or you think, I'm going to give it to somebody, at a certain time I'm going to give them this robe. In the meantime, I'll use it. Okay? So it really cuts out this possessive mind that, wants a lot of robes. Yeah? I mean, you might need maybe 3 donkas, something like that, because, you switch, you have to wash your clothes, and, we only wash on certain days and things like that. But you don't need a whole pile of donkas, and we don't need a whole pile of undershirts, and we sleep, in our underskirt, and then a t-shirt, that's good enough. And, we don't need one jacket, well, actually 2 jackets in case one needs to be washed. And then I need 2 coats, and then I also need a light coat, and then I need a sweater, well, maybe 2 sweaters, or maybe 4 sweaters, because there's some sweaters I wear when it's a little bit cold, and some sweaters where it's very cold. And then pretty soon you wind up with a drawer full of various sweaters, jackets, vests, coats, and so on, and that's not appropriate. Okay? The same thing can go with hats, gloves, scarves, because we need those things. To really try and keep it simple and not, and people, give us many different things, and so even if you think I will need this later, for the time being, put it in the closet with all the monastic robes, and then if you need it later, if it's still there, you take it. If it's not still there, I'm sure you'll find something. Yeah, because we very fortunately don't suffer from a lack of things, and we have a surplus. Okay, but we don't need to keep so many things in our room. You may need some long underwear, but you don't need 5 pairs of long underwear. Okay? Same with socks, and then we try and repair things. If something tears, we don't just throw it away and go get a new one. We repair it, and we wear things until they're really old and worn out. Yeah. At the time of the Buddha, it was very difficult for them to get robes, and that's one reason. If you look at all of our robes, they're all patched, because you were lucky if you found just scraps of material, and they would often go to the cemetery and take the material, the shrouds that, when they dumped the bodies in the cemetery, they would take the shrouds and then dye them and stitch them together, and they're stitched together in this pattern because the Buddha one day was standing looking out over the rice fields and noticing the beautiful pattern, and you can still see this in India today, of how the small plots are arranged, and so wanted the robes arranged in a certain way. Yeah, we definitely don't need more than 1 chugu and more than 1 namtar. If you ordained in the Chinese tradition, and you have your robes from that, then your present Tibetan robes are your namjar and your chugu, and then the other ones, if you want to keep them, you don't claim them as your own, because then you would possess too many, or we can give them to other people who may need them. Yeah, that doesn't happen too often, because usually at the ordinations they offer people are very happy to offer the new robes. Okay, does that, yeah, did we cover everything there? Anything else? Okay. Okay, then a change in your name. So we should be addressed by our Dharma name. I know when I started out, it was very few people use their Dharma names, because it's so much of nobody could pronounce the Tibetan, and we couldn't remember each other's names, and it's just so much easier to use the name you know somebody by. But I think it really does change your feeling when you have a new name. Yeah, because your old name is just associated with, so many different things. I heard somebody say once, why do kids have middle names? Because then you know when you're really in trouble. Because it's true, isn't it? When you're really in trouble, it's, Cheryl Andrea Green. It's like my passport name. So it's much better actually if we could use our ordained names, because our ordained names also have meanings, and it's inspiring when you reflect on the meaning of your ordained name. It gives you something to kind of live up to in some way. Okay. In terms of legally changing your name, some people do, some people don't. I think that's completely up to the individual. I didn't legally change my name, basically, because I'm too lazy. And, it's too much of a hassle, so I use my legal name for legal things, and I use Tupten for everything else. And it's worked out. I know other people who have legally changed their name to their ordination name, so it's up to you as a person. Okay, then change in livelihood or occupation. This is a big one. Okay, and this is very important as Buddhism goes to the West. Extremely important, because if you look at Buddhism in Asia, the monastics do not work individually for their own personal income. If they're working for the monastery. Yeah. So, for example, some of the monasteries in India will set up guest houses, and they'll send a few of the monks to manage the guest house. Yeah. Personally speaking, I don't think that's a good idea, because I think when monastics are hanging out with tourists and travelers, their minds change. Okay, so personally speaking, I wouldn't choose that. But they're doing it, okay? But the money goes to the monastery. Yeah, when they have these tours, the profits go to the monasteries. Very often people will give them individual offerings. They tend to keep that themselves. But what I'm getting into now is the whole financial structure of the Sangha, which I think is quite important, because in old Tibet, you had rich monks and poor monks. If you've ever read Geshe Rapton's autobiography, he hardly had anything to eat. And then there's because he came from a very poor family and didn't kind of make friends with all the rich people in town who would give him money. And then there were other people who had benefactors and who ate better and who had better housing. And in the monasteries nowadays, what they often do is they try and get individual sponsors for individual monks. The nuns have been doing it completely differently, which I think is much, much better. And that is, instead of the sponsors giving the money directly to the individuals, which again can easily create class differences. Those that have benefactors that give more, and benefactors who send presents, and those who don't have benefactors, or whose benefactors don't send as much. Okay, and then you have some monks that have 2 or 3 benefactors, while others don't have any. So this whole thing that comes, I don't think is a good idea, because we were emphasizing before that the monastics should have equal access to resources, and that's very important for the equality in the Sangha. And so I think it's much better when donations are given that they come to the monastery, and that the monastery then supports everybody. Yeah. And that way everybody is supported equally, and the money, some people get more offerings, some people get less offerings. It comes, and it's used to support everybody in the monastery. Okay? In the U.S., we have to take it into consideration, the high cost of health, things here. And it really is, in no other country do you have to pay as much for medical care as in this country. It's really outlandish and outrageous. So what we have is, if people have money from before they ordain, this is the way we do it at the Abbey, is they can keep that money, but they can only use it for medical and dental expenses. Yeah. And when you're fully ordained, then the monastery pays your health insurance, but until you're fully ordained, you have to pay your own. And that's because, the monastery wants to know that you're really in there for the long haul, that you're really stable in the practice before covering your health insurance. So if you have funds from before, you can keep them, but you can only use them for that, or you can use them for traveling to teachings or for making offerings. And if you don't have enough money, for your health expenses, then the monastery, the Abbey, will supply them. But if you have savings from before, then you're expected to use those savings. Okay? But you cannot go and buy your own clothes. Usually regarding shoes, we see if there's somebody who wants to offer them, and we may need to go out and try them on because otherwise they don't fit. Yeah. But you can't go buy a new blanket for yourself, or a new light for your room, or a new anything for your room. Okay. Toiletries we have a common supply of toiletries and things. If you have certain skin problems or whatever, you can't use the soap, then, we can, when somebody calls and says, please, and says, I want to offer something, then we can give them the name of the kind of soap you need for your skin, or if you need something special. Yeah, but aside from that, you can't go out and buy your own stuff, because that really creates too much of a class difference. And I have been very aware of that, as I've lived in monastic communities. And it doesn't create a good feeling. And also, when you can go to the store and buy stuff for yourself, then that consumer mind comes back. And it's like, well, I just want to get a few artificial flowers for my altar. It's for my altar. Come on, I can go get it. But while I'm at the store, I also see a nice vase for my altar. Not for the community altar, for my altar. And also at the store, they also sell, certain kind of this or that, and I happen to need that as well. Okay, and so then it's very easy to start buying all sorts of stuff for yourself. Yeah, the issues of computers come up. Yeah, at the Abbey, we may use the term my computer or so-and-so's computer, but in fact all the computers belong to the Abbey. They are not your individual computer. Yeah. And if your computer doesn't work, we get it fixed. If it breaks, and you need a new one, we'll supply it. But you can't just go around getting a new computer because you want a new computer. Yeah. And, some people say, well, I need a computer for my work and I need a computer for my study. Really? The computers have so many gigabytes on them now. Why do you need two different computers? Okay. Well, if you're doing your study in Gautami House, where there's no internet, and you have a big computer over here and you can't carry your big computer over there, then that makes some sense. You have a smaller computer you use for your study. But if you do your study where there's internet, you don't need a separate computer for that. Yeah? You just, if you're afraid, of using your work computer for study, then you just make 2 different logons, and you log off your work thing and when you're studying, using your computer for study. Because otherwise, especially with technology, we always need the latest, newest, this and that, don't we? Yeah? And there's never any end to it. So the same with, cell phones or fancy phones, Maybe we have 1 or 2 for the Abbey, which we usually forget to take with us when we need them. But we're trying to remember because sometimes people need to call us when we're in town. But aside from that, we don't have our own cell phones. There's no need for that, And there's no need to get the latest this, that, and the other thing. Okay, so let's remember to try and keep it simple. Of course, if your old computer just isn't working with the new programs, or it takes 15 minutes to turn on, which we did have that problem at one point, then you say something, and the Abbey gets your new computer. But we have to keep the mind wanting possessions to a minimum. Okay? Yeah. Similarly, in our rooms, no family pictures. Yeah, because it breeds attachment, doesn't it? Family pictures. You don't need pictures of yourself in your room. Yeah. I have one picture that Tracy gave me of me offering soap to Geshe Jumpa Chok. I have that. But I've seen I went to one monk's place in the U.S., and the apartment was filled with pictures of him, with his holiness, with this and that. It gave me a certain impression. Yeah? But we don't need mementos. We don't need small decorative objects and souvenirs. Okay? All we need in our room is, what we use for study, our, if we have, our altar, and clothes. Yeah? I mean, I have my office in my room, so I also have paper in my room, and, stuff like that. I have some katas. I have tea bags. Yeah, vitamins, whatever. Yeah, but really try and keep things as simple as possible. Because you'll notice that at the beginning of the practice, your mind will have one definition of simplicity, like we did yesterday, and you think, I'm really living a simple lifestyle. And that's because you've kind of pared it down. But as you practice more, then you realize, actually, I could live simpler. I could live simpler. At the Zen monastery at Mount Shasta, when you're a postulant and a novice, so I think for 6 years, you don't have your own bedroom. You sleep in the meditation hall, so there is absolutely no question of not getting up for meditation. Because you sleep in the hall, so you got to get up. There's a small cabinet in front of your place, and you have your robes and, toiletries in there. Yeah. I don't know if they have their own desks or not. I'm not sure. But, what you have is really at a minimum. Mm-hmm. And it's very good training. And I've talked to some of the senior monastics, and they say what some of people were saying yesterday is that then when you're senior and you get your own room, you are trained, and so hopefully you're not as greedy about possessions. But somehow, because there's more space, and you don't have your small cabinet. It's just the possessions start sticking in your room. Yeah, and so again, we have to be vigilant about continually, taking things out that we don't really need. Okay, if you need a lamp because your eyes are getting strained reading in your room, then you talk to the monastery and we'll come up with a lamp somewhere. Okay, but really keeping it simple as much as possible. Okay. Then the whole thing, livelihood and occupation. Okay. So the Buddha was very strict at that. It was an agricultural society. India was an agricultural society at that time. So the monastics could not grow crops. They could not work the fields. So the reason for that was twofold. One was it's too easy to get into an occupation, growing food, because that's what everybody did. And second, the possibility of killing animals and insects. Okay? Also in our precepts, we're not allowed to buy and sell things, so we can't do business. Many monasteries do business. At least in the Tibetan community, they have various businesses. Again, and in the West, many monasteries have businesses. I prefer, I think it's just much clearer that we live the way the Buddha intended, which is dependent on the kindness of people who give us donations. Because if we do business, then our mind becomes a business mind, and we're always looking for how we can get the most money out of something. And what new product we can produce, and where we can market it, and what price we're going to charge, and who we give discounts to. And and that gets you into a state of mind that is not very productive for your Dharma practice. Yeah, so at the Abbey, everything is given freely. The reason we do ask some people to give a deposit for programs, or to give a certain amount of dana before a program, is so that they commit to come. Because we were having the situation happen. At the beginning, we didn't ask people to do this, but we had the situation where people would register and then not show up, and because they only canceled at the last minute, there was no time to fill their place with somebody else. Okay? So in order to get people to feel more committed to coming, then we said, they have to send in, a small donation, some donation beforehand. Or for the long programs, they send in some dana, not their own dana. You're not paying your own way, but you're making it possible for the Abbey to have the program. So everybody's getting sponsored by on longer programs like EML or the winter retreat, then we ask for that. But the reason is to support everybody doing the program. Yeah, it's happened that people come and say, I want to attend a program, I don't have any money. We let them come. It's fine, but we want to make sure people are committed to coming so that places don't go unused. Okay? And also, I think that by doing it and not charging things, it's like then that gives us the freedom to give, and we create virtue by having a mind of generosity that wants to give, and then we hope people reciprocate. Okay, and I've seen, many Buddhist centers now charge for courses, charge for teachings, some of them pretty hefty amounts, and the Buddha never charged. The Buddha never charged. His disciples never charged. If there were costs, it was because there were benefactors who made offerings because they saw it was so virtuous to make offerings so that so many people could come hear the teachings. So that's a really beautiful mind, you know. And now when His Holiness teaches in India, this is very much the way it's done. There's usually somebody who invites and they support, or a group of people, an organization invite and they support. And then they also have an office open during the teachings where everybody can give donations, because you have so many people there, so many monastics. And as they say in a group that's big, there's got to be some bodhisattvas, you know. And so just giving even a little bit, you create so much merit, you know, making contribution to the Sangha. And so then everybody creates merit, everybody has this really happy mind. Whereas if you have to pay for a ticket to go, you know, and you're getting charged for it, it just, you know, it just doesn't feel right. It isn't good. You know, now I recognize in the West, it's a different seating thing. In India, you don't have seats, you know. So if 10 people don't show up, it's not like 10 seats go wasted and there's 10 people who wanted to come who couldn't, because in India, everybody just crams in. Yeah. In the West, you know, if you give out the tickets and then people don't come, then there's a lot of seats that go wasted. Yeah. So you have to, you know, I can see the need, therefore, to charge a small amount, yeah, for that, in order to get people to really think about coming and not just grab a whole bunch of tickets when they don't need them or aren't going to use them. Okay? But, you know, and His Holiness nowadays, he prohibits sponsoring groups to make a profit from having him come. He says any money that's left over should be given away to charity. Yeah, and he himself does not take anything from it. Or if they give him money, he then gives it away. I mean, because His Holiness sponsors the whole Tibetan government in exile, I think, by his funds. So again, you know, not to have this mind of doing business, but from our side, just being able to give, and then other people's side being able to give. And then everybody feels happy because they're giving. Yeah, and that creates such a different mentality, you know, when everybody's giving freely. When you give the Dharma freely, you know, people can come and stay here freely. That doesn't mean we let everybody come and stay. Yeah, there also has to be a screening process. Yeah, because we've had people come and they have absolutely no money, and then it doesn't work out for them here, and they don't have any money to go on to wherever they're going to go to. And that's not fair to them, you know. So we make sure when people come that they always have enough money so that if they have to leave, they can get to where they're going. Okay? So, you know, we have different requirements and so on, but we're not, you know, charging so much a day. And people will write us and say, can I have a single room, and I'm willing to pay more. And it's like, sorry, we don't have any single rooms, and we aren't charging you to start with. Yeah. Yeah, because part of the thing is to be part of the community, and you know, and to give freely. Okay, the money from the publications, these all the money from my royalties, it goes into a special account. It's used only for Dharma money. You know, we use it for statues, for Dharma-related activities, for teachers' airfare when we invite guest teachers. You know, all that money does not get used for food, clothing, this kind of stuff. It's only for Dharma-related things. Yeah, and so in the West, what you see is a lot of monastics working. And I think this is a tragedy. In the beginning, it was because the Dharma centers were very poor, and also because Westerners didn't have much respect for monastics. and so didn't think to support the monastics in the Dharma centers. So the monastics had to work either for the Dharma center, where they got room and board and maybe a small stipend, or, many monastics work at regular jobs, and then where they have to put on lay clothes, and they have their own flats and everything, and their car, and then they put on their robes when they go to the Dharma center. And I think this is, it's not a good idea. Yeah, it's extremely difficult to keep your precepts when you're basically living like a layperson, except for putting on your robes and going to the Dharma center. Very difficult to keep your precepts. The mind is always worried about money, and you have to get a job that pays a certain amount because you have to pay for rent and food and all these things. Then also you can so easily go to the market, the department store, and get what you want when you want it. Yeah, so the mind doesn't change much. It is very much because of the physical condition. It's very much like it was before you ordained, And it's even gotten so bad, that some of my friends who were leading the preparing for ordination class at Tushita told me that one man came one year and to prepare he wanted to take ordination with His Holiness, and he thought after he ordained he could go back and live in the house with his wife. It was like there was no difference in his mind between being a monastic and, being a layperson, and that's just, that is what makes the Dharma degenerate, I think, when that happens. And so I know the situation in the West is difficult, okay? But I think we have to work to make it better, and instead of just giving into it and saying, okay, well, I need my flat, and my car, and my this and my that, and my TV, and my blah, 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 and blah, 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 And try and at least live together with other Sangha members, because it helps you practice to live together with other people. When you live on your own, it's easy not to wear your robes and spend money when you want. When you at least live with some other people, because it just increases your mindfulness of what you're doing. And what I've noticed is in recent years, even some geshis at the center now tell their students their ordained students to go out and get a job. And that I find really interesting, because at the very beginning the geshis would say only work if you have to, but try and get it so that you can stay at the center and study as much as possible. But then some centers, just have enormous costs of rent, and the Sangha who lives there pays rent, and so the geshi tells them also go out and get a job. And I just... I find that very difficult. And then, of course, so you get some of it from that side, you get some of it from the side of people who want to ordain, but they really want to keep the same lifestyle they had before. It's really a rather sticky situation, and everybody's motivations in all of this is going to be very, very different. Yeah, but... and also it's quite a different thing than I know some senior monastics who are professors. They live on their own, they have their own car and their own stuff. But they've also been ordained for 30 years. Yeah, and they also know how to live simply, and they also keep their precepts very well. And that's a completely different ballgame than somebody who's brand new ordained, or somebody who's only been ordained 3, 4, 5 years, who really needs training. Yeah, because when you live on your own, you don't get that training. Yeah, and so very, very difficult. Yeah, and I realize community life isn't for everybody. Yeah, but there's so many benefits that come from living in a community, because you can really see when there's a community, the collection of your merit makes so much more possible. It's like if I want to receive teachings, no teacher, no matter how much money I have, is going to come to teach me alone. I do not have the merit, for somebody to teach me alone. You know, I want to learn Abbey Samael Ankara for 5 years. Come and teach me alone. I don't have that merit. You know, teachers come when there's a group. Yeah? So when there's a Sangha community, or at least a lay Dharma center with some Sangha members in it, then, you know, you're able to get teachings and you know, have more Dharma in your life. Yeah, so I think this is something really to think about. You know, it's like if you're going to ordain, well, why do I want to ordain? You know, like this man, you know, why do I want to ordain if I'm going to go back and live in the house with my wife and keep my job? What's the purpose? Yeah? Well, he might say, well, I want to keep precepts. Well, then keep the 8 precepts. Yeah? The 8 precepts are perfect for lay people. Yeah? Because you have the 5 fundamental precepts, plus your 3rd precept becomes celibacy, you know, and then you have the 3 other precepts. And if you want to live like a monastic, but not be a monastic, because you have to, you know, like you know, I mean, that's what you do, and it's really praiseworthy, I think, to take the 8 precepts and keep them, you know, and then there's no confusion about, is somebody a monastic, is somebody a lay person? Yeah? Yeah, so we have a few people affiliated with the Abbey who have taken 8 precepts and live like that, and I think it's wonderful. Yeah? Okay, any questions about that? I think this whole thing about livelihood and occupation is quite important. Yeah?
So then, because when I hear this kind of thing, and I have my own concerns, the concerns of the pure Dharma to flourish and to sustain in the West, because I'm living here, I'm more and more convinced that it's the Sangha that will do that for the most part. So if it's only the Sangha, as far as keeping the Dharma pure, then becomes the bigger issue for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. You know, because the Sangha acts as the example. And when you have a community and a place where the Sangha lives, then there's a place where people in society associate with the Dharma. You know, there are many lay teachers, and it's fine to be a lay teacher. But your house with your spouse and your kids does not give the same energy as a monastery. Your house is not going to be the place where people think of when they want to think of virtue being created. Yeah? So it's a very different thing. And I really see the difficulty for lay Dharma teachers who don't work another job. It's very admirable. They've devoted their life to the Dharma. They don't work another job. But by not working another job, then even though they do Dharma talks on dana, where the places that give the most dana get those teachers more. Yeah? And so a lay teacher always has to think, you know, I have to pay my rent, and my kids have to have Nike shoes and go to summer camp, and, you know, my spouse and I want to go on vacation, and our whole income is dependent on my teaching the Dharma, and it's all done on dana basis. So let's think about where the crowds are going to be biggest and where those people are the most generous, and those are the places that I choose to go. Whereas as a monastic, we don't have to feed a family. You know, we don't go on vacation. Yeah, so you don't have those concerns. Yeah. Now, it's true that a lot of our support does come from teaching. Yeah, but we don't choose where we go to teach based on who gives us the most dana. We choose where we go to teach based on the sincerity of the people who invite us. You know, and the people who really we can see practice and have the most sincere interest in the Dharma. And some places we go and the people give a lot of dana, and some places we go and the people don't give much dana, and it's okay. Yeah, the same. Some people stay here, they give a lot, some people don't. It's okay. whatever people give, we want them to give from their hearts, not because they're doing business. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then also when you said, I take it I couldn't move here with a truck full of stuff.
Yeah, well, you know, most everybody who comes and moves here arrives with a truck full of stuff, and they offer it all to the community. Yeah? So that's what most people do. When they vacate their house, the furniture, you know, comes here. But then you have to be careful because the furniture goes in other people's rooms. And then you look and it's like, they stained it. They're not taking care of my beautiful furniture. Well, it's not your beautiful furniture anymore. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
You know, when the Tibetan nuns were here and I was planning to make momos from them,
Mm-hmm.
I think, is there a market in Spokane? So we can go and sell momos there. And I thought, gosh, it took me a while to understand that that's often what monastics do in the
Yeah.
in India, right? To make food and sell it at teachings.
Right.
And they kept telling me that I should promise to go with them into the market when I go back in December and set up shop with them. I hope I don't remember them selling things.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I've never seen monastic selling at teachings before, only lay people.
Yeah. They'll usually, yes.
They're joking.
I was blind at the Jampu Ramen.
Yeah. Yeah, and the monasteries will have restaurants. Usually they'll ask lay people to work in them, but I've seen monastics work in them too. You know, and guest houses and selling carpets and I don't know. Yeah.
When the Holiness was in Sydney a couple of months ago,
Mhm.
the 3-day teaching on the Chica, there were lots of stalls upstairs, and a great many of them were run by monastics. They were selling Dharma things.
Dharma things. Yeah. But it's still selling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still selling. And it gives you know, like with our Dharma things here, we just put them out. People can take them, and we hope they give a donation. You know, which is quite different than being there, taking their money, giving them the change. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, a few years ago, I met a fellow who was a monk. I think he was living in Spain, and he had to work as a photographer because he didn't get close to the center. But I guess sometimes when you drive to near center, so he's constantly changing clothes. And I thought, well, what do his neighbors think about what a monastic is?
Yeah.
So some days we he's a lay person taking photographs, and then sometimes he's looking like a monk.
Yeah.
So that's really hard for lay people too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's very hard for lay people when they don't know what you are. Yeah. Yeah. Circa Rinpoche used the example of a bat. Yeah. For a bat, when people are putting out mouse traps, then the bat says, "I'm not a mouse, I'm not a mouse, I'm a bird." And when people are trapping birds, then the bat says, "I'm not a bird, I'm not a bird, I'm a mouse." You know? So you're not quite sure what you are. You know? So like a chameleon. So that's not so good for the mind. Yeah. Yeah. And you can really see, I mean, what we're doing involves an incredible process of education, because people come here, they have no idea what a monastic is, how monastics live, anything about it, you know. So we've really had to teach them and explain what dana means and the economy of generosity, and explain some of the etiquette and different things like that. But what we've really seen is how the lay supporters are really, you know, generating sincere respect for the Sangha. Not for us as individuals, because respect for the Sangha is not for the individual. It has nothing to do with you as an individual. Yeah, so if somebody offers you respect because you're in robes, don't start getting all inflated. It has nothing to do with you as an individual. It has to do with your wearing the Buddha's robes. And those robes are inspiring, and those robes give people a visualization of what they can become, and of people's potential in general. They give people a vision of ethical conduct and of people trying to develop love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Yeah. So we find, as we're going along, that people are developing that kind of association with the robes. But really, especially if you go to Asia, people will bow, not in Tibet, not in the Tibetan society, but if you go, to Taiwan, or, people will bow to you or Singapore will bow to you because, you're wearing robes. And you always think, there's the Buddha in my heart and the people are bowing to the Buddha. It has nothing to do with me. Yeah. But you really see how, when people are doing that, you develop this sense of, wow, their minds are so virtuous. They have this incredible faith in the triple jewel, the triple gem, and this cloth is representing that to them. And when they're bowing, their faith in the triple gem is being expressed, and it's so beautiful to think about that. So you really rejoice at their merit. Mm-hmm. Same if they give you an offering. It has nothing to do with you. Yeah, it has to do with the robes, with the Sangha, with keeping the vows, that the precepts that the Buddha, set down. Yeah, and so you see people's virtuous minds, and there they are giving you, money or whatever, and you think, what did I do? I'm not doing anything. And then you think, well, my part of the thing is I've got to keep my precepts well, and I've got to do my practice well. Yeah. So I can't oversleep, and I can't just kind of indulge in my attachments. I really have to work with my mind because I'm wearing those robes, and that's what those robes are indicating. Yeah. So it's not a thing of guilt-tripping ourselves or pushing ourselves. It's a thing of growing into an image of yourself as even image of yourself doesn't work, because we don't want to create self-images, but an awareness of your potential. It's growing into an awareness of your potential to be a beneficial influence to people. Simply by wearing the robes, by doing your practice, by how you carry yourself, by how you talk to other people. And then of course, all of that depends on how you really work with your own mind. Yeah, because if you're a monastic and you're out in public and you're getting angry, it gives people a certain visualization. Yeah. Or you're hanging out in the movie theaters, it gives people a certain visualization. Okay, so we will continue with this tomorrow. But I think these are important topics, to constantly remind ourselves, so that we get some kind of idea really about what monastic life is all about. And because we're just creating it here, let's try and create it in a really good way. Yeah, instead of creating it in the lowest common denominator, let's try and create it in a really excellent way. Yeah.
The issues are often that on screen there, people so directly. So I have seen that, and people get ordained and they do so crazy things. They don't have experience, they don't have the Sangha community. They learn from seniors and so on, and then just go and get the ropes again, and all these very confusing things also for lay people. And the patients are doing it because they're thinking one day or day in this more virtuous than another day? Or?
Yeah, I mean, this is part of a cultural difference, you know, is that the Geshis, first of all, they think that it's more virtue keeping the precepts one day in this degenerate age than it is keeping them for your entire lifetime at the time of the Buddha. Second of all, they have the idea, because this is the way it was in Old Tibet. In Old Tibet, you need a lot of people to do the study program where you're doing debate and discussion. You need a lot of people. And so their idea is you ordain a lot of people so you can do that program. And then also, because they ordain, so they take so many people in when they're children, you don't really know what they're gonna grow up to be. So the idea is then you take in a lot of people, and then through that, the ones who are really suitable and who are good scholars in something, they'll rise and you'll see them. Yeah, and then the rest will serve the monastery or disrobe and go and sell sweaters or whatever. Yeah, so that's their way of thinking. Yeah, and then also when they're in the West, they think, oh, well, somebody came and asked me for ordination. They're going to be very upset if I don't say no, so I should say yes. But then it gets really sticky. I mean, as you noted, people in robes and out of robes, and people with very severe mental problems get ordained and then they don't act properly, and it really makes the lay people lose respect for the Sangha as an institution, which is really unfortunate when that happens. But the Geshis, so many of them don't speak our own Western languages, so they just, you know, and whenever anybody goes in front of a Geshe, they always act really well. So it looks like the person's fine, you know, even though they could be, you know, totally psychotic, and I've seen this happen. And, you know, whenever we've tried to establish it in, you know, when there's a large organization, tried to establish it so that the Westerners do the screening, the Geshis don't like that. Yeah, so they like to ordain people and then they send them to the Westerners, and we have to live with them. But that doesn't work in a monastery. You know, if you have a monastery, you're the ones who have to be able to discern who comes and lives with you and who ordains. Yeah, and so when the Geshis don't do that, that's difficulty, you know. And also, technically speaking, according to Vinaya, if you ordain somebody, you should help them with their support, at least with simple accommodation and food and so on. And for most of the Geshis who ordain Westerners, their chief, where most of their dana goes, is back to their own communities, the Tibetan communities in exile or in Tibet. And if anything, they expect the Westerners to help them raise money. So it you know, it's difficult.
Is there an impression that they have more priority toward the teaching too than toward, philosophy teaching toward than the Vinaya teaching?
Yeah. They also, you know, in some ways, the Tibetans have this joke. They think that's completely hilarious, which is, and I don't think it's so funny. But anyway, because when you do your studies, the Vinaya comes at the end. Because theoretically, the idea is you study Prajnaparamita, you study emptiness, you study logic, you study Abhidharma, and through all that study, then of course you want to become a monastic to really practice. So Vinaya comes at the end. The reality is you take ordination first and then you go study all those topics in the Tibetan monasteries. You know, as lay people, you really can't go into the monasteries, you know, the strict monasteries, and not strict, but the monasteries don't have very many lay disciples, if any at all. Yeah. So then the Tibetans say, oh, you know, when you have your precepts, then you don't study Vinaya, because that's at the beginning of your training. You have the precepts, but you don't study Vinaya because that's an advanced class. And by the time you get to Vinaya, you don't have your precepts anymore. Yeah? So they go, and I go, oh, ho, ho, ho. Yeah? So whereas in the Theravada countries and also in Chinese Buddhism, at the beginning you learn Vinaya. Yeah? And I think that's quite helpful. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
Just another comment about that is I've seen a couple of curricula at different lineages monasteries that aren't Kaluppa, and they do put Vinaya first, the first couple of years.
Mm. Okay, that's good.